The invitation came in a text message. It said there would be a big summer pool party at Grandma's beach house on Saturday at 2 p.m. My children were very excited when they heard about it. Emma, who was 8 years old, immediately asked if she could wear her favorite pink swimsuit. Noah, who was 6 years old, wanted to know if there would be diving boards and water games. I smiled as they talked about all the fun they were going to have. They had not seen some of their cousins in a long time, so they were looking forward to spending the day with family. Saturday finally arrived. The weather was beautiful. The sun was shining brightly, and the sky was clear and blue. The children woke up early because they were so excited. After breakfast, they quickly put on their swimsuits. I packed towels, sunscreen, snacks, and a fruit salad that I had prepared to share with everyone at the party. Then we got into the car and started the 40-minute drive to the beach house. The whole way there, Emma and Noah talked nonstop. They talked about swimming. They talked about seeing their cousins. They talked about collecting seashells on the beach. Their excitement made me happy. I had not visited the beach house for several months, so I was looking forward to seeing everyone too. When we finally arrived, I noticed that the driveway was packed with cars. There were vehicles everywhere. It looked like a huge gathering. As we walked toward the gate, I could already hear people laughing and talking. Through the fence, I could see a large crowd around the pool. There were family members, neighbors, and many of Grandma's friends. At least 50 people seemed to be there. The children could hardly contain their excitement. They ran ahead of me carrying their towels. I followed behind with the beach bag and fruit salad. Everything seemed perfect. Then Grandma noticed us. She was standing near the pool talking to some of her friends. The moment she saw us, her smile disappeared. Her face suddenly became serious. She walked toward us. "What are you doing here?" she asked loudly. Her voice was so loud that people nearby stopped talking. I looked at her in confusion. "You invited us," I said. "You sent me a message about the party. It said Saturday at 2 p.m. Grandma shook her head. "That message wasn't for you," she said. "It was supposed to go to your sister. I clicked your name by mistake." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Emma and Noah looked confused. They were already dressed in their swimsuits and ready to jump into the pool. "Well, we're already here," I said calmly. "The kids are excited to swim." Just then, I noticed that Emma had already climbed down the ladder and stepped into the shallow end of the pool. She was smiling happily. Suddenly Grandma shouted, "Get out of the pool!" The entire area became quiet. People stopped talking. People stopped laughing. Everyone looked at us. Emma froze. Her smile disappeared immediately. She looked scared and confused. Noah moved closer to me and grabbed my hand. "Mom," I said quietly, trying to stay calm. "They're just children. They only want to swim." Grandma crossed her arms. "They can swim somewhere else," she said. Then she said something that hurt more than anything else. She said that this party was only for family members who had made good choices. Then she looked directly at Emma. I said, "Get out." My daughter slowly climbed out of the pool. Water dripped from her swimsuit. Tears rolled down her face. She looked embarrassed and heartbroken. I quickly wrapped a towel around her shoulders. My heart was breaking for her. She had done nothing wrong. She was only a child who wanted to swim. "Let's go," I said softly. "But we just got here," Noah whispered. His voice was full of sadness. "I know, sweetheart," I replied. "We'll find somewhere else to go." I gathered our things. All around us, people watched. Nobody said anything. Nobody stood up for my children. My sister stood near the barbecue and stared at the ground. My brother looked down at his phone. Everyone acted as if they didn't know what to do. As we walked toward the gate, Grandma followed us. Instead of apologizing, she continued saying hurtful things. She said she was embarrassed by me. She talked about my divorce. She talked about my job. She acted as if I had failed in life. Every word hurts. But what hurt the most was knowing that my children were hearing everything. I stayed silent. I did not want to argue in front of them. I helped Emma and Noah into the car. Both of them were crying. Then we drove away. As I looked into the rearview mirror, I could see people returning to the party. They started talking again. They started laughing again. It was as if nothing had happened. For a while, nobody spoke in the car. Then Emma asked a question. "Why does Grandma hate us?" The question felt like a knife in my heart. "She doesn't hate you," I said gently. But Emma remembered exactly what Grandma had said. She called us broken. I didn't know how to answer. No child should ever have to hear words like that. Instead of going home, I drove to a public beach. The children spent the afternoon playing in the ocean. They chased waves. They collected shells. They built sandcastles. Slowly, their smiles returned. I sat on the sand and thought about everything that had happened. I could not stop thinking about the look on Emma's face when she climbed out of that pool. By evening, the children were tired. We drove home quietly. After dinner, I tucked them into bed. Then I sat alone in my home office. I opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside were property papers and rental agreements. There was something my family did not know. The beach house Grandma loved so much was actually mine. I had purchased it 6 years earlier as an investment. In fact, it was one of several rental properties that I owned. Grandma had been renting that house from me for 3 years. She had no idea. Nobody in my family knew. They believed I had a simple job and struggled to get by. The truth was very different. I worked as a software engineer. For years, I had created computer applications. One of those projects became very successful. When I sold it, I earned enough money to invest in real estate. Over time, I bought several properties. I lived a simple life because I wanted to save money and build a secure future for my children. I didn't care about showing off. I didn't care about expensive cars or fancy clothes. The simple house I lived in was a choice. The practical car I drove was a choice. I wanted financial security, not attention. I had also given Grandma a special deal because she was family. The beach house could have rented for around $4,000 each month during summer. Instead, I charged her only $1,200. I thought I was helping her enjoy retirement. Now things felt different. I could still hear Emma crying in her room. I could still remember Grandma humiliating my children. I decided something needed to change. On Monday morning, I called the property management company that handled my rentals. "Rachel, it's Jessica," I said. "Hi, Jessica," she replied. "I need you to send a lease termination notice to the beach house." Rachel sounded surprised. "Is your mother moving?" "Not voluntarily," I answered. "Please give her a 60-day notice." Rachel paused. Then she said, "Understood. I'll take care of it today." After hanging up, I called my lawyer and reviewed all my property documents. Everything was legal. Everything was in order. The notice was mailed on Tuesday. On Wednesday, my phone rang. It was Grandma. She sounded angry. "What is this notice?" she demanded. "It says my lease isn't being renewed." "That's correct," I replied calmly. "But why?" she asked. "I've been a good tenant. I pay on time. The owner has decided not to renew the lease." "Who is the owner?" she asked. "I want to talk to them." I remained calm. "You have a month-to-month lease now. Proper notice has been given." She became quiet. Then she suddenly asked, "This is because of Saturday, isn't it?" I did not answer her question directly. "You'll figure it out eventually," I said. Then she hung up. Only a few minutes later, my sister called. "Mom is really upset," she said. "She thinks you're somehow involved." I laughed softly. I thought I was just a divorced failure with a mediocre job. My sister sighed. "She was rude, but do you really have to do this?" I thought about Emma standing in that pool. I thought about Noah holding my leg because he was scared. "She humiliated my children," I said. My sister was silent. Finally she said, "She was setting boundaries." "Then I'm setting mine," I replied. The calls continued for days. My brother called. My aunt called. Other relatives called. Everyone wanted me to help Grandma. Nobody wanted to talk about what happened to my children. Nobody wanted to talk about the pain they felt. I ignored the criticism. Instead, I spent my time with Emma and Noah. One afternoon we visited another beach. The children laughed and played in the sand. Emma smiled and said, "This beach is better than Grandma's pool." I smiled. "Why do you think so?" She thought for a moment. Then she answered, "Because we're welcome here." Her words stayed with me. A week later, on Friday afternoon, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Grandma was standing there. She looked tired and frustrated. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm busy. Please. Just 5 minutes." Reluctantly, I let her inside. Thankfully, the children were at a neighbor's house. Grandma sat on the couch. "I've spent the entire week searching for a new rental," she said. "Everything is either booked or too expensive." She looked directly at me. "I need you to help me." "How?" "Talk to my landlord. Explain that this is all a misunderstanding." I shook my head. "I can't help you." Her face hardened. "Can or won't?" "Both." "Jessica, I'm your mother." I looked at her quietly. "You threw my children out of a pool party," I said. "You called them broken in front of everyone." Grandma frowned. "I was teaching you about consequences." I stared at her. "What consequences?" I asked. "Leaving a marriage where I wasn't happy? Working hard to support my children? Creating a safe and stable home for them?" For the first time, Grandma had no answer. She simply sat there in silence. And for the first time in many years, she seemed unsure of herself. I was a single mother living in a small house. The house was about 1,200 square feet, and it was fully paid for. I did not owe any money on it. I also drove a car that was 5 years old. It was not fancy, but it worked well and never gave me trouble. I always lived carefully. I did not spend money on expensive things. Because of that, many people thought I did not have much money. My mother was one of those people. When she stood in my living room talking about her problems, I almost told her the truth. I almost explained that my financial situation was much better than she imagined. I almost told her that I owned more than she knew. But something stopped me. "I can't help you with the landlord situation," I said quietly. "You need to leave now." My mother stood up quickly. Her face became red with anger. "Fine," she snapped. "When I'm homeless this summer, you can live with the guilt." "You won't be homeless," I replied calmly. "You have other choices." She shook her head and walked out. The door slammed behind her so hard that the windows rattled. After that day, the 60-day notice kept counting down. As the days passed, my mother called me again and again. Every week she sounded more worried. The beach house meant everything to her. She loved showing it off to her friends. She hosted parties there. She invited guests to stay for weekends. She held family gatherings there. Her book club met there. She loved hearing people tell her how beautiful the place was. Without that house, her life would look very different. She would have to move into a smaller apartment far away from the beach. She would no longer have a swimming pool. She would no longer have a beautiful ocean view. Most of all, she would no longer have the house that made her feel important. Sometimes I felt a tiny bit guilty. Then I would remember Emma climbing out of the swimming pool with tears in her eyes. I would remember Noah standing beside her, confused and embarrassed. I would remember how my mother had called them children from a broken home. I would remember all the people standing around watching while my children were humiliated. And then the guilt disappeared. On the 45th day, my lawyer called me. "Your mother filed a complaint with the rental board," he said. I frowned. "On what grounds?" "She claims the landlord is refusing to renew her lease because she exercised her rights during a private event." I could hardly believe it. "The beach house isn't her property," I said. "She doesn't own it. She doesn't have the right to throw my children out of a family gathering." "I know," my lawyer said. "But she made an official complaint. The rental board wants a response from the property owner." "When is the hearing?" "Day 53. "I'll be there." The day of the hearing finally arrived. My mother walked into the room with her lawyer. She looked confident. She probably expected to see a representative from some rental company. Instead, she saw me sitting at the table reserved for the property owner. Her eyes widened. "What are you doing here?" she asked. The hearing officer looked up from her papers. "Ms. Wilson is the owner of the property," she explained. My mother blinked several times. "That's impossible." The hearing officer shook her head. "No, it isn't. Jessica Wilson purchased the property 6 years ago. She has owned it during your entire tenancy." My mother's face turned pale. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something into her ear. Finally she looked at me. "The beach house belongs to you?" "Yes." "The whole time?" "Yes." She stared at me in shock. "You let me rent it all these years?" "I did." "Why?" "Because I wanted to help my family." She sat down slowly. The hearing officer cleared her throat. "Ms. Wilson, your complaint alleges housing discrimination. Please explain your position." My mother's lawyer stood up. "Our position is that the landlord is retaliating against my client for exercising her rights during a private event." I stood and spoke calmly. The event was held at my property. My mother invited about 50 guests. During that event, she publicly threw my children out of the swimming pool and humiliated them. I handed over photographs. There were pictures of Emma and Noah before the party. They were smiling and excited. I also provided messages from guests who had witnessed everything. Several people had contacted me afterward because they felt terrible about what happened. The hearing officer carefully read every message. Then I spoke again. My children were embarrassed and deeply hurt. They were excluded from a family gathering held at property that belongs to me. After witnessing that behavior, I decided I no longer wished to provide discounted housing to the person responsible. The hearing officer nodded thoughtfully. She looked directly at my mother. "This board handles discrimination complaints. Property owners may choose not to renew a lease for reasons that do not violate housing laws. Family disagreements are not discrimination." "But she's punishing me because I set boundaries," my mother protested. The hearing officer folded her hands. "You set boundaries at her property regarding her children. She is now setting boundaries regarding her property." Then she closed the file. Complaint dismissed. Lease termination stands. The hearing was over. My mother lost. We left the building separately. I thought the conversation was finished. But as I reached my car, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my mother. "I didn't know the beach house was yours," she said quietly. "I know. You let me believe I was renting from strangers." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I wanted you to enjoy it without feeling like you owed me." She looked away. "And now you're taking it away?" "Yes." Her eyes filled with frustration. "Because of one party?" I shook my head. "No. Because you hurt my children. It was one mistake." "It wasn't just one mistake." She remained silent. You called me a divorce failure, I continued. She lowered her head. You said my job was mediocre. Still she said nothing. You called my children broken because their parents divorced. Her face filled with shame. You embarrassed them in front of dozens of people. I was trying to teach you something, she whispered. About choices? She nodded. I looked directly at her. You're right. Choices matter. She swallowed hard. You made your choices that day. Now I'm making mine. A few moments later, I got into my car and drove away. The 60 days eventually ended. My mother moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment about 30 miles inland. There was no ocean nearby. There was no swimming pool. There was no beautiful beach house. There were no fancy parties. There were no impressed guests. For the first time in many years, she had to live a simpler life. I decided not to rent out the beach house immediately. Instead, I spent the summer there with Emma and Noah. We swam in the pool together. This time nobody told us we didn't belong. We spent hours collecting shells along the shore. We built sandcastles. We watched sunsets over the water. We laughed more than we had in months. Slowly, the hurt from that terrible party began to fade. One evening, while we sat on the beach, Emma asked me a question. Mom. Yes, sweetheart. Will Grandma ever say sorry? I looked out at the ocean. I don't know. She thought quietly for a moment. If she does, should we forgive her? That depends. On what? On whether she really means it. Emma nodded. And whether she changes. What if she doesn't change? I smiled gently. Then we keep building our own happy life. Without her. Without anyone who makes us feel small. Emma seemed to understand. Months passed. Then Christmas arrived. The family gathered together. I wasn't sure what would happen. Neither were the children. Then something surprising happened. My mother walked over to Emma and Noah. She slowly knelt down in front of them. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then she took a deep breath. I owe you both an apology, she said. The room became very quiet. I was wrong. Emma and Noah listened carefully. You are not broken. Tears filled her eyes. I hurt your feelings and I embarrassed you. I am very sorry. Emma looked at me. I nodded. My daughter turned back to her grandmother. It's okay, Grandma, she said softly. The apology wasn't perfect. Nothing could completely erase what happened. But it was honest. And that mattered. Over the next several months, my mother slowly changed. She started asking about my work and actually listening to the answers. She became kinder to my children. She stopped making cruel comments. She learned to show respect instead of judgment. Little by little, our family began healing. Eventually, I rented the beach house to new tenants who paid the full market price. The extra money went directly into college savings accounts for Emma and Noah. Every month, those accounts grew larger. I felt proud knowing that one day the money would help my children build their futures. Sometimes we still visited the beach house ourselves. We swam in the same pool where we had once been told to leave. We walked along the same beach. We watched the same sunsets. But now those memories belong to us. Whenever my children doubted themselves, I reminded them of something important. Dignity isn't about having a big house. It isn't about having money. It isn't about what other people think. Emma and Noah would listen carefully. Then I would finish with the lesson I hoped they would remember forever. Your worth comes from who you are inside. Even when other people cannot see it, you should always know your own value. And from that day forward, that lesson stayed with all of us forever.
अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ ये जो दिन सहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा बेसर्द लगता है दिल का हर एक कोना अब बहुत ही दूर भरता है अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं ये जो दिन सुहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा सर्द लगता है दिल का हर खोने की राहों में फकत एक गम ही लिखा था। सितारों से भी पूछता है पता तेरा कहाँ होगा, मगर खामोश है दुनिया, कहाँ मेरा जहाँ होगा। बस एक बार मुड़ के देख ले मेरी बेबसी की सूरत। मुझे है आज भी तेरी वफा की सख्त जरूरत। साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर। साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर, दर्द का असर।